Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another one of our virtual open iftars in Ramadan 2021. And I'd just like to thank you for joining us all today. My name is Hassan, and I have the honor of being your host for this evening. We have an exciting event planned this evening centered on the topic of bridging communities through faith and culture. Our guest speakers tonight are Sarah Joseph, OBE, Zara Sultana, MP, and Rabbi Nuton Levy. But before we get started, I first would like to thank our media partner for this year. That's the Islam Channel, and also give a special welcome to those joining us from Islam Channel's Facebook and YouTube pages. It is a pleasure to have you, all of us, with us today. I'd also like to express our thanks to the Arts Council UK, whose help has allowed us to continue our great work this Ramadan, all of which you can read up on our website. Our work this Ramadan is also supported by Islamic Relief. They are our charity partner this year, and you can check out all the incredible work Islamic Relief does at iruk.co/RTP. Finally, our virtual open iftars are meant to be interactive, so I'd like to encourage everyone, if you can, please do hop onto the Zoom meeting. We've got links on our websites. It just means that you can interact with us. You can obviously pose questions to the speakers, or even talk to me if you'd like. Just before I'd just like to make a humble request to everyone that is on the Zoom meeting. If you could please turn on your cameras, just for myself and the speakers. I think it's amazing that we can see who we're actually speaking to on our audience, it's just good to see a friendly face, yeah, that would be amazing. Also, just a quick, before we get started, I'd just like to quickly run through the tech. I'm sure you're all experts on Zoom by now, but there are always a couple of people that might need some help, and we don't want to leave them behind. So, what you'll see is that you've got a reactions button if you're joining sort of on desktop or laptop, or on mobile. It might be 3 dots, but if you click on reactions, you're able to see sort of a thumbs up and emojis and things like that. And also, if you want, you could also raise your hand. If someone could just show that we know how to use the tech, that would be amazing. And thank you, Shabana. We've got a thumbs up from Shabana. Feel free to and thank you as well, Nafisa. I'd also mention we've got a chat function as well. I can see some of you are already using it. Thank you. Salam alaikum to you, Sarah. Feel free to, obviously, as the speakers and myself are speaking, feel free to use the chat function to communicate with yourselves. Also, feel free to pose any questions you might have. If you feel that you can't get my attention by raising your hands, we've got people that are monitoring the chat function as well. So you can use that as a medium to communicate with us. Just in terms of just before we begin, I'll just run you guys through a quick agenda for today. We've got a short video that will play in a couple of minutes time, and then we'll have about 10 minutes allotted to each of our speakers, and we'll sort of wrap up with a Q&A to all of them, and then before that we should play the azan, which I think is around just before quarter to 9 today, inshallah. So that's the plan for today. Yeah, let's begin with Bismillah. Sarah, if we could, I know we've got a video from Darren Henley, who's from the Arts Council UK, the CEO, in fact. So if we could kick off with that short video, that would be amazing.
Hello everybody, I'm Roly Keating, I'm Chief Executive at the British Library, and on behalf of all of us at the Library, I would like to wish all our neighbours and friends in the local community a peaceful and joyful Ramadan. This year
looks like we're having some technical difficulties. Cool, excellent. Well, if we want to try and play that again, we can try. But in the meantime, let's try and speak to some of our guests. Shabana, if I could unmute you. Salam alaikum.
Alaikum salam, how are you?
Yeah, good, alhamdulillah. How has your fast been today?
It's been good. Towards the end. It's kind of that thing where I don't know, it's just the end of the road. It's you want to try and cram as much reflection time and prayer time in as possible. But yeah, it's good. The weather's obviously not great in Manchester. It's where I am at the moment. A lot of rain.
Is it a lot of rain? I don't know.
Four seasons.
To be honest, like I don't know if I'm from London, and I don't know if anyone's from here, but like I feel like we've been in a state of drought for like the last month or something. So it's I don't know, it's probably the human condition, right? Like you're in Manchester, you're fed up of like the rain, and like over here, like I'm fed up of crispy sort of cold days. It's just there doesn't seem to be anything different, and like for me, I'd personally love to have some rain. So maybe, I don't know, we need to swap places or something.
Send you some Rahans. I think it's rained quite a bit, but no, literally it was the 4 seasons today of hail, thunder, lightning, sunshine, storm. But yeah, is it crazy? How's your fast going anyway?
Alhamdulillah, like I think a bit like yourself, it almost feels like we're in the sort of sprint finish to the end, and it feels like I don't know, there's sort of like I would say there's probably a bit of burnout, a bit of like like last night was pretty intense, and like it's sort of like thankfully today I haven't had to work. I've got this week off, just purely because I've just got way too many holidays to take this year and probably nowhere to go. but no, alhamdulillah, like it's a blessing to be able to spend, obviously, like to not have another distraction, to sort of take my time. So yeah, but alhamdulillah, like it's been good. I would say like this Ramadan for me has been what's been good has been just that that I've been able to reconnect with the mosque again, which was like something that was a massive miss last Ramadan. And also like my grandmother lives next to the mosque as well, so it's actually also been nice because after night prayers I've been able to go and spend some time with her, and I haven't had that, obviously, like that connection sort of for a long while. So it almost, and also it's like it's not actually my local mosque as well, so like my local mosque is too small to accommodate, obviously, like with social distancing measures and things, so I've had to travel like 3 or 4 miles away but it's also my childhood mosque as well, so where I actually grew up. So it's actually like a very like nostalgic, almost being there. It's like reliving a lot of like childhood memories and things like that. So alhamdulillah, it's been a very blessed time, and yeah, like to be honest, I'm just like anyone, just blessed to be able to observe the month and to make it, because I know there's so many families and people that haven't had had that opportunity. So alhamdulillah, it's been amazing. And thank you, Sarah, for the kind words as well. No, it's just I'm sure like there are like Ramadan means something for everyone in a different way, or it sort of hits you like every year is a new challenge. Like we've had new challenges, and sort of you always come back with something else to reflect upon Ramadan. So for me, like this month was just establishing that reconnection with the mosque, and sort of for some of my loved ones that I haven't been able to see for quite a long time. So alhamdulillah, like that's a blessing in itself, obviously. And yeah, may Allah bless us all in any way, shape or form that we need. Thank you for your time anyway, Shabana. So I'm just sort of conscious of time. I'll try and I think it's probably a good time to bring in our first speaker for the evening, which is Sarah Joseph OBE. Just a quick intro on Sarah. Like she's a well-known writer. I'm sure you were all aware of her, broadcaster and public speaker. She was the founder of CEO ML Muslim Lifestyle, and her passion is to get people to recognize their shared humanity and our common responsibility to this earth. She manages this through her work with ML Media Group, but also through other avenues, including her regular Pause for Thought on the Chris Evans Breakfast Show, which is Britain's most popular radio show. Yeah, tonight's topic is bridging communities through faith and culture. So Sarah, we'd love to hear what you have to say on this most blessed topics.
Thank you, Hassan. Ramadan Mubarak to you. And just a thing, it is now Zoe Ball on the
Oh, is
show.
it?
Yes.
It shows I've never heard this show, so like I mean,
you've never heard it. Well, it's Radio 2, BBC Radio 2.
Right.
God bless. And Chris was with us for many years, and but we now have the lovely Zoe Ball. But I've been doing it since Terry Wogan's time, which shows you how old I am. But anyway, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I do begin in the name of God, the most merciful, the most kind. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praises due to God, the Lord of all the worlds. And assalamu alaikum to everybody. Peace be upon you all. Firstly, thank you, Ramadan 10. It seems just like a moment ago that we were actually doing the pre-Ramadan warm-up events. And here we are just a couple of days away from finishing this blessed month, which has been, it's definitely been a challenge. The first 10 days for me were absolutely, I was like, yeah, this is fine. This is easy this year. Alhamdulillah, sailing through. Middle 10 days were like, okay, this is a bit tricky. But the final 10 days are absolutely, I've been absolutely exhausted in so many ways, personally, and then obviously what, the world and globally, it's just an exhausting time. But anyway, we're here tonight to discuss the way faiths can come together, looking at it through the eyes and the prism of culture and arts, but that's not the only way. And I think that there's this weird misnomer, this really strange idea that faiths are at each other's throat all of the time, and that religion is the cause of all violence in the world, and all of the problems of the world are at religion's door. On the contrary, I mean, my experience, and I've been working in interfaith for since the late 1980s, so a very long time. And my experience of interfaith work is actually one of activism and one of engagement. It's not always easy. At the end of the day, ultimately, one person's deeply held belief is another person's heresy. And so on a faith-based level, often you're dealing with some of the most difficult questions around deeply held beliefs, but there is a real shared experience of the sacred. And that is really important, particularly and profoundly in a secular world. And we have the capacity to have some really tough conversations. And I think once upon a time, certainly in my early interfaith work, going back into the late 1980s, it was a lot of tea and biscuits and chit chat. But what I see now, however, is some serious activism. And I'd say, as the world kind of faces three really major crises at the moment, right now, as we're talking, we're facing a global pandemic, so this huge health crisis. We're facing an economic crisis, which is linked to the pandemic, but preceded actually the pandemic. And we're facing a climate crisis. And that climate crisis has the potential to derail every person on this planet, regardless of faith, political allegiances, or anything else. And all of these things, I believe, are linked by a kind of global refusal to resist consumerism, and I would contend a reliance on a worldview that's ultimately destructive and an anathema, certainly to Islamic values of humans as vicegerents, as the rights of the poor, the rights of the earth, justice as the closest thing to God consciousness, and the constant reminder of the prophetic message and the Quranic message of the transience of life. But it's also linked to other faiths as well. So we really share these messages, and I'll point you to Pope Francis's speech from 2 days ago, where he says, where we create and foster a sick economy which allows a very rich few to own more than the rest of humanity. And faith is working on that. We're working on environment. We're working, faith's coming together and do a lot of work on planetary justice, on stewardship, a sense of responsibility to the planet. And we can continue to work on these themes. On poverty, I mean, faith groups provide services, obviously food banks, which really for us in 21st century Britain, the fact that we are the fifth world economy, fifth richest world economy, and that so many people have to rely on faith-given food and food banks is absolutely intolerable. But that is the fact of the day. And you see it in mosques, you see it in gurdwaras, you see it in churches, you see it in synagogues, you see it in temples. They're all coming, you know, faith groups providing food bank services. And we're standing against, as faith communities, against rampant and unrestrained capitalism and poverty. But more than that, we also see the pastoral care of communities, which faiths are taking on. It's Mental Health Awareness Week this week. And again, that's something which is fundamentally important and growing, particularly, you know, we've seen in the pandemic, but it's reached epidemic proportions over the past sort of 15 years or so. And faith communities are providing that personal and relevant community space to look after and care for individuals. And then I'd also look at technology, and I work on a project in relation to AI and faith, artificial intelligence and faith, where what we see now are real issues pertaining to technology, to silos that technology to create, to the way technology splits communities. And I point you to say, watch something like, for example, The Social Network, if you've got Netflix, to watch that film and to see how technology is dividing communities and how faith is bringing communities together. So this is the work that's kind of going on, and I know this because I'm in the thick of such conversations on a day-to-day basis with, you know, dear friends or rabbis who are being arrested for their climate activism, and, you know, Hindu activists and Buddhists and Christians all working on these issues. And we have to give encouragement to each other and encouragement to organizations to work with faith organizations, because some places are hesitant, you know, as if working with faith groups somehow messes up their secular neutral credentials, as if secularism is in somehow neutral and faith is too hot to handle. So we do need to show up for each other. We need to show that working with faiths is really important. I mean, 85% of the global world's populations are adherents to a faith group. And this is not fringe stuff. This is central to communities, central to their sense of identity, central to their very, very structures. And I think this is why Ramadan tent is so important. You know, under this tent, you bring people together, diverse people who don't necessarily agree with each other all of the time. That's okay. That's right. That's what we've got to have to do. We have to bring together people and have the tough conversations. And providing this space for people to gather is so important. And I thank you for that. And, you know, you've been working for so long with so many different things. Like yesterday, it was with the Football Association, the Adhan at Wembley. Sport brings people together. And tonight it's the arts and culture. And I'm so pleased that the Arts Council, and we haven't seen the video yet, but inshallah, God willing, we will, that the Arts Council has come on board, because art and culture can amplify the work and support the communities to ask really the big questions. And providing, you know, art can provide a space for bridge building, and it provides a way for narratives to be unearthed and discussed, because the use of music or plays or art or filmmaking or storytelling, it brings people together to tell their stories and to explore their similarities and to navigate their differences. And we have to do that because, you know, we have a lot in common and there's a lot that we don't share, and that's okay. It's okay not to be the same. In the Quran, when it's described how we're created as nations and tribes, that we know one another. That's not that we can hate one another, and so we should know our differences, and that's okay. So arts and culture does allow us to navigate these spaces. And it's powerful work and needs to be done. And I truly believe that we have to strengthen our faith institutions and strengthen our faith communities to do more and more, ultimately because the numbers are there, because the engagement is there and because the enthusiasm is there. And ultimately, as Muslim, we've just fasted, with 28 out of 30 days of fasting, to give up food and drink for 30 days, to give up your sleep for that amount of time. Goodness knows we're all fatigued. There is this passion, this impulse, this dedication, this diligence and discipline that can be harnessed for good. And inshallah, God willing, there will be that kind of awareness and engagement with faith communities. Okay, that's it. That's my 10. I hope that's a sort of intro into some of the themes which I find really important. But just to clarify, just looking at health, environment, and poverty, these are issues that we really want to bring to the fore as faith communities. And that work is happening today in this world, thank God.
Jazakallah for your wise words. I think we can all definitely reflect and sort of understand that faith, I think, can be such an important bridge, between our communities, just understanding, more about ourselves and each other. I think that's so important. I know Sister Sarah mentioned the video from the Arts Council. I know it's been sort of hovering around in the background. We've tried to play it sort of 2 times now, so I'm hoping 3rd time's a charm. And if I could ask Rehan to give it a go this time, and we would love to hear from the Arts Council.
Ramadan Mubarak, and thank you so much for inviting me into your big tent. My name is Darren Henley. I run Arts Council England, and I'd like to start tonight by asking you a question. When you hear the word artist, what do you think of? A wild-haired figure in a garret furiously painting in a moment of inspiration. A brilliant but unapproachable figure dashing off works of genius which sell for millions of pounds the following week. Now, I'm sure some artists do live in garrets and do have wild hair. Some do make a lot of money, although most of them don't. But what they have in common with people like Steve Jobs of Apple, with the inventor Thomas Edison, with Sarah Gilbert, who created the Oxford vaccine, and I think with you. We are all creative people. Steve Jobs said that creativity was just a matter of rearranging things in ways that hadn't been done before. He meant looking at trying out a new approach and keeping at it until it worked. Because creativity is hard work. It's trial and error, but when it pays off, it changes everything. Thomas Edison pioneered the light bulb, the phonograph, which became the record player, and the telephone, all by the age of 35. He's remembered as one of the great creative minds of the modern age. But before he was 35, he'd filed more than 100 patents for other inventions. What were they for? Well, we'll never know, because they didn't work, so he just moved on to something that would. Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive, who made Apple computers the force they are, moved on from transforming the computer industry to the mobile phone. And the iPhone was the beginning of a revolution in how we live that hasn't stopped. They changed how we work, how we communicate, how we buy, and how we sell. Just one spark of ingenuity allowing you to do this means that we can see in detail and close up what used to be blurry. And that means you can see a loved one's face, a map, the brushstrokes on a painting in minute detail from thousands of miles away. This is just one of the tiny gestures we all make now which has changed the way we live. That creativity is at the heart of what the Arts Council does. Our job is to invest public money in people and companies so they can make and share culture in every form, for every community and for every part of the country. We were founded back in 1946, when this country was exhausted by war, mourning its dead, clearing the rubble, and counting the cost. It's the era that gave us the NHS as well, and for 75 years we've tried quite simply to make people happy. Because happiness, that simplest of words and most elusive of emotions, is a noble thing to want. And culture in all its forms, creativity in all its forms, does make people happy. You don't need the scientific data to know this. You just need to look at a child's face when they first sing a song, or make a tune out of a trumpet, or go to the theatre to see a pantomime. It makes people happy, and it makes them successful in other ways. Now, I said you don't need the data, but I'm going to give you some anyway. Michigan State University examined the lives of all the Nobel Prize winners in the 20th century, every single one. And every one got the prize for making a breakthrough, for seeing a problem in a new way. And those who had an active interest in the arts were much more likely than their peers to get a Nobel Prize. Play a musical instrument, twice as likely. Write novels or poetry, 12 times as likely. And if you performed as an actor, a dancer, even as a musician, 22 times more likely. So the Arts Council encourages and funds the creative sector so it can produce its best work, so we can enjoy it and become creatives ourselves. It builds the ladder for others to climb, from the first rung of hearing a piece of music performed brilliantly or watching a play, right up to the top rung of being the composer of music or the actor who stars in that play. Let me give you one example of how we do this. Akram Khan's dance company is one of the best known in the world right now. He leads a group of dancers who've performed for millions, who dance like no one else, and who've introduced Kathak to a whole new global audience. How did he get to be so good? Raw talent, hard work, the ability to do things differently, and this is where we come in, because he believed in himself and others believed in him. And because there was a ladder there to help him take his talent as far as it could go. Starting at age 7, he was so talented he was spotted by Academy, the Arts Council funded South Asian dance company, then taken up by the Royal Shakespeare Company and the South Bank Centre in London. We fund both of them. Then, when he was ready to set up his own company, we were there for him too. And not just for him. We give funding and mentoring to hundreds of arts companies and thousands of individuals, so they can be part of a scene where there's something for everyone and every taste. People like the sculptor and painter Zara Hussain, and places like Bradford and Liverpool, who both have arts festivals we support with a focus on Muslim arts and life. Now, we can't all be Akram Khan or Zara Hussain, but we can all love what they do and admire its skill and passion. And that's a creative act in itself. Being in the audience is not a passive thing. It asks things of you, exposing yourself to something new, focus, concentration, that in return can give you a lifetime of new experiences. I used to work at Classic FM, and what made me happiest was the people I'd meet who told me they'd come to love classical music through hearing it on my radio station. So what we try to do at the Arts Council is to encourage the widest possible kind of culture for people to try for themselves. We don't define what the right kind of culture is, we just support what's well made and has possibilities. Then it's up to the audience. And in the next few years, we'll be trying a new thing, helping people to find their inner creative. Very few creative people ever get to be world class, just as most Sunday morning joggers don't tend to end up at the Olympics. But there's so much joy to be had from finding out for yourself what creativity means. Wherever you are in England, you won't be far from an arts organisation we fund, and they all love audiences who give it a go. It might be for a painting class, a toot on a French horn, or a book club. Whatever it is, I've never met anyone who didn't get something out of giving it a go. And that leads me on to my last point before I let you enjoy your evening. All these arts organisations I mentioned have had a difficult year because of the pandemic, as have so many families, communities and companies across the country. Like this event tonight, these arts organisations have kept going online, not in person. Virtual big tents like this one have been great, but they're not the same as the real thing, are they? And the big tents cover everything from the likes of Tate Modern to small community arts centres, and 3/4 of the places we fund are on high streets, right in the heart of their communities. They all deserve our support, and they're slowly welcoming back visitors over the summer. So as Ramadan is a time for reflection and for thinking about how to give back, please have a think about your local arts scene. If you value what an arts venue does or where it is, Why not buy a ticket? Or just visit the cafe for a cup of tea if you can? Or how about becoming a volunteer there, or signing up for a class to learn something new? Because as with so many things, the more you put in, the more you get out. So have a blessed Ramadan and enjoy tonight's iftar. And remember that ladder I talked about. It's there for everybody to use. You can choose how far you climb, but the view from every single rung is absolutely amazing.
Thank you to Darren from the Arts Council. Yeah, personally, I think that was quite an amazing thing to hear about. Just how much that the Arts Council do just to broaden this inter sort of faith dialogue and bridging these communities together. So yeah, please do heed what Darren's asking for and try and support the arts councils or your local arts centres to try and continuing this great work to happen. I hope it was informative to everyone that heard about it, and yeah, hopefully you can use that ladder that Darren speaks about to try and proceed with it, whatever your ambitions are. Okay, just in the interest of time, I'd like to bring in Zara, if I could. Zara, hope you're well.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Zara Sultana. I'm the Labour Member of Parliament for Coventry South. I was elected in December 2019, and I just want to thank the team at Ramadan 10 Project for inviting me, because as a student and as an activist, I spent a lot of time in London for conferences and demonstrations and events during times when I was fasting. So it was always a pleasure to take part in the physical tent and put my phone under a bottle of water and have that really cool lantern. So it's an absolute pleasure to see how the Ramadan Tent Project has grown from strength to strength over the past few years. I'm not going to specifically touch on arts and culture, although some might argue that the drama you see in politics is basically culture. I will be talking about why Ramadan is such an important time for me, as it is for all Muslims and people on this call. And in this year in particular, it has been a period of intense reflection, lots of blessings, inshallah, and togetherness at a time when COVID-19 has taken so much away from us. From personal experience, I know that many of us, especially people from Black, Asian, and ethnic minority communities who have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19 will have spent this month breaking our fast with an empty chair where a grandparent, parent, sibling, cousin, aunt or uncle used to be. And this might be the first or the second Ramadan without our loved ones present. So I just want to extend my solidarity, give you my love and my duas for everyone who's experiencing this separation and this pain. And I pray that God allows all our souls that are hurting some ease and some relief. These struggles, of course, haven't been limited to our local communities, from Muslims in India facing a deadly second wave of COVID-19 to communities in Syria and Yemen who've spent the past decade or so facing bombings, to Rohingya Muslims in refugee camps and the plight of Uyghurs in Xinjiang. And of course, we can't forget the devastating scenes we're witnessing in Palestine, where Palestinians are being violently attacked whilst worshipping in Al-Aqsa, the third holiest mosque in our faith, and being forced out of their homes, as well as those in countries that aren't able to buy or manufacture vaccines due to patents, those with livelihoods that have been destroyed or they've been forced into poverty, while the wealthy in our society continue to lay claim to resources and wealth disproportionately so, as well as those who have been made refugees through wars and climate change. There are layers upon layers of oppression across this world that we can't ignore, and especially during Ramadan. So as we look to rebuild or reflect on the society that we have momentarily left during this pandemic, we know that that's not a society we can return to. And that's because it was a world that was broken, a society rife with inequality, poverty, and corruption. And it's our faith that actually tells us, orders us to put complacency aside. God tells us that we need to speak up for justice, even if it is against ourselves. And Ramadan tells us that we can't be content with any kind of stagnation, whether that's spiritual or otherwise. As a member of parliament, My primary role has been to represent my constituents and hold this government to account for its failures. It is a job that I am incredibly honoured by. I see it as serving people and by extension serving God. And in the same time, since that I've been elected, we have seen so much happen. I've spent more time under lockdown restrictions as a member of parliament than actually not. So we've been used to using technology. Darren's presentation was looking at how, inventions like the iPhone and so forth have really changed the way we've worked. While I've been doing a lot of my parliamentary work through my laptop, virtual parliament, proxy voting, and so forth. But more than anything, this time we have seen this government really show its true colours, in the sense that hundreds of millions of pounds have been given, that's public money, in crony contracts awarded to friends of the Conservative Party, while NHS staff and key workers who people were clapping for on Thursday evenings have been refused a real pay rise. We've had this government ignore scientific advice, and we've seen that in terms of how we've locked down far too late and the avoidable deaths that has resulted in, to the continuing of arms sales to regimes led by tyrants, while stopping asylum seekers and refugees from being able to reach safety here, as well as refusing to feed working class kids during the holidays, reducing overseas aid to just 0.5% of national income. And of course, the fact that we are not actually dealing with the climate crisis at the scale that we need to. And this is a legacy of a government that essentially doesn't care about its people. It doesn't care about the obligations we have to each other, to the world, to the planet, and to the society that the next generation will inherit. So trying to work in this situation is difficult. And that's why Ramadan is so important to me, because it reminds me that all of my actions have consequences, no matter how little they might seem. And speaking up for good or against injustice is never wasted. Ramadan teaches us faith-led principles of discipline, of equality and gratitude that we have to hold to even in the worst and most difficult of times. It renews a sense of purpose, encouraging us all to continue in the pursuit of justice and collectively in solidarity with each other. And importantly to me, also to speak truth to power and hold ourselves in the highest regards possible, to the highest standards. And I know that there might be people watching who aren't interested in politics. That's okay. I'm not trying to convert you to politics, I promise. But I firmly believe that whether or not we are interested in politics, politics is interested in us. And that's why I'm in this position today. Alhamdulillah. As we complete our fasts, offer our prayers and give in charity, all of these actions that are so symbolic of this month, I do have an additional cheeky request to those who are listening. And it's not cheeky at all, actually. My request is that we take time to listen to the voices of marginalized communities, that we amplify the cause of justice, that we never abandon solidarity with each other, that we continue to act with mercy and compassion towards those we are responsible for representing, and that might be as elected representatives, as employers, and all the other roles that we hold, that we keep an eye on what's going on in the world beyond ourselves, that we offer support to those facing persecution. And if we're not able to do that, then as believers, we have the power of dua, which is the most powerful thing of all, and that we take small steps in this month as it comes to its end with the aim of building year-long action. So thank you very much for listening. I know it is very difficult right now. Sarah mentioned, the exhaustion that we're feeling, not just because of fasting and sleeping and working, but also seeing the harm that is being unleashed to all communities across the world. So I just want to wish a very early Eid Mubarak to everyone who will be celebrating this week. And I pray that the last few days of Ramadan, which have just flown by, are illuminating, merciful, and full of blessings. So thank you very much, and assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, Zara. Thank you for your wise words and bringing to light such important topics that are happening around the globe to all of our attentions. Like also for your passion as well. It came across that like you do really care about what you do. So like may Allah bless you, and continue to make you able to do all the good work that you do inside Parliament and outside, inshallah khair. I'd just like to bring in our third speaker for the evening. It's Rabbi Nuton Levy. He's the head of operations for Faith Forums London. He was also environmental liaison to the former Chief Rabbi Lord Sachs, the interfaith consultant to the Board of Deputies of British Jews from 2013 to 2017, and also a university chaplain to Bristol University. His research interests are around sort of cross currents between ecology and faith, interfaith grassroots movements in the UK, Europe, and the Middle East, and also dialectical encounters in comparative scripture.
It sounds very highfalutin. I'll try to keep up with all that. First of all, it's a huge honor to be here, Hassan, and everyone on the Ramadan Tent Project team. I can recall back when Omar invited me when it was at SOAS. Some of you were there. Yeah. The first one was sitting there, and what a revelation to come across this tent in the middle of London. And for those who were there, it was just an amazing project of like, there was a place where no matter who you were, no matter how you came, you were welcome. And of course, that always harkens in, I think, for all of our shared tradition, back to Ibrahim, our shared father, and his tent. And so that got me started thinking a little bit about, Ramadan tent, Abraham's tent, Ibrahim, and this strange moment that one of my rabbis asked, because, rabbis have to have rabbis. So one of my teachers would always ask me, what's going on with Abraham? He's pretty well-to-do. He's got a lot of sheep and camels, and most people around him, if you look around in his milieu, they're all living in houses. In fact, there's a pivotal scene where he turns to Lot and he says, Lot, we have too many animals here. What are we going to do to share? You go off. And Lot says, okay, I'm off. And he goes to Sodom to go live in a house, right? And so Abraham encounters Pharaoh, who's in his palace house, and he encounters Abimelech, who's in his house. Again and again, Abraham meets folk who are in houses. And yet, Abraham keeps living in a tent, right? So here's the question. What's Abraham doing living in a tent? He can clearly afford a house. Clearly his colleagues and, co-workers and Lot, his young nephew can afford a house, and yet he continues to live in a tent. Okay, this is where the chat comes in, guys, where the monologue is going to end for a moment. What do you think? Why does Abraham continuously focus on not being in a house, only in a tent for his whole life? You never see him in a house, just in a tent. I'm waiting for the chats to come rolling through. Hassan, can you read some of them off? I can't see.
Yes, I can. So Sarah said a tent is transient. We've got Magda said it's easier for people to come. I basically said he's got everything he needs in the tent. Shabana says it's welcoming. I think that's a very good point. I like, you can see that the tent's open itself, right? Like that in itself is like it's an open door.
Yeah. So. I mean, and some of them, that's it. I don't need to speak anymore. You've got it already. Sort of this place where there is no door, where it's always a place of welcome. It said in particular, there's a midrash, which is like a hadith in the Jewish tradition, that says Abraham had doors on all four sides of his tent, so that you wouldn't even have to walk around to get there. You could just walk right in. From whatever direction, you were welcome in Abraham's tent. As you were in the Ramadan tent, for anyone who came. You don't have to walk very far to get in. You just walk right in. And I just to pick up on something that Zara said, which is about trying to avoid stagnation. Abraham was allergic to staying still. Abraham never would put down foundations in any ideology, in any place. He would never say, now I have clear roots here. I belong here. I'm set here. This is my system and I won't change. He's always open to change. And I think that is what makes him such a powerful leader, that he's always open and there's nothing graven He's no image that he holds on to, and that's why he becomes our paradigm of monotheism. There is no graven image, which I want to talk about a little bit, because when you get to art, we have to speak a little bit about our traditions where we can't capture the forms of anything and say that's God, which raises a serious question, because if you read through the Bible, there's all these stories about the patriarchs and whatnot, and then you get to the main part of the Bible, at least the Old Testament part, and it's all about building a big tent, and in the middle of that big tent, of course, is a very large statue, right? And that large statue, let's stop the share for a second. That large piece is what's called the Ark of the Covenant. Now, for those of you who've seen the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, you've seen this one? You know, there's a big golden image, and it's graven, it looks like that. And there's two angels. Can you imagine the two angels coming together? I have a slide, but my slide's not working at the moment. So imagine there's two angels, and they're facing with their wings over each other. And there is what's called the Kadosh Kadoshim, the Holy of Holies, inside the tent at the center of the encampment that the Israelites build in the middle of the desert as a significant sacred place, is two angels, two what looks to be very graven artistic image. And I know Art Council is really pushing all of us to find how great and joyous art can be. But we also have a tradition which says there can't be graven images, there can't be iconic figures of God. So what does God do? And why is he saying to these Israelites, build yourself this Ark of the Covenant with your two angels facing like this in the middle? So I went back to my rabbi, and he said, you read the text wrong, right? You read the text wrong. God isn't in the angels. God is between the angels. God speaks in that place where the angels look at one another, face one another, confront one another face to face. And that's where God emerges. That's where the voice of God is heard. What's called the Kol D'Mamad Deka, the still small voice of God. I miss our ability to be together during this lockdown. It's so hard, that face-to-face encounter. Don't you feel like Zoom is challenging because it's so flat? I miss the three-dimensionality, the textures of us together. That face-to-face where we can find what's happening in the middle is always more powerful than either of one of us can get to alone. And I think that leads off not just to a place where we're looking at one another as people who are different, but really leading to a further point, which was developed by an 18th century Rebbe, which is a rabbi with a long coat and a big furry hat. And the Rebbe said to his students, do you know the line in the Torah, in the Bible? It says, V'yafta recha kamocha. That's going to be finally being translated down at the bottom. We'll see how they do. V'yafta recha kamocha is love thy neighbor as thyself. Love thy neighbor as you love yourself. Funny line, right? Love your neighbors, you love yourself, right? So they asked the Rebbe, what does that line mean? And the Rebbe said, I learned everything about that line and everything about love in the pub, in the local inn, with two fellows, Ivan and Peter, we'll call them. And Peter turned to Ivan, crying, tears in his eyes, and he said, Ivan, do you love me? And Ivan says, of course, I'm your best friend. Of course, Peter, I love you. And he says, Ivan said, and Peter said, Ivan, do you know what hurts me? Do you know what pains me? Do you know what brings me pain? And Ivan says, do you know, Peter, I don't. You're a different person. I don't know about your pain. I don't know about your hurt. And Peter says, Ivan, if you don't know what hurts me, how can you know what really loves me? How can you love me if you don't know what brings me pain? That truly to love another human being, to be close to that person, it's not just to see them, but to see what's going to hurt them. And I have to say, this evening, thinking about a tent and thinking about Abraham and thinking about our two people, how much pain would be in the eyes of Abraham if he knew how deeply we as cousins, as Jews and Muslims, were locked over Jerusalem, a place that should be called Yerushalem, that God will see and God will find peace in. A place of peace has been turned into a place where it's almost impossible to see the pain of the other. One more story rabbis have to have stories in them. What do you do in a place to find justice? If not, tell a story. A story about Jerusalem, how it came to be, because there's another midrash, like one of these stories. And that story is there was once two brothers, and they stood on two opposite ends of this mountain. And one brother had loads of family, and one brother was all living single. And they're raising their fields of wheat. And the brother who's single says, you know, my brother across the other side of that mountain, he has all those kids to take care of. He's going to need extra wheat, and I have it. So I'm going to go in the middle of the night, grab wheat in a bundle from my own store, and I'm going to take it on my back, and I'm going to carry it over to him, and I'll drop it into his granary. Meanwhile, at the exact same night, the exact same time, the brother with all the kids is like, you know, my brother's all alone. He doesn't have much. He needs to find a family. He needs to, you know, pay for a dowry. He needs to make it happen. I got to help him. I'm going to take wheat from my granary. I'm going to take it and schlep it, take it all the way up the hill, middle of the night, and I'll take it over to him. So guess what happens? Middle of the night, they both grab their grain and pass without seeing each other, middle of the night, and they drop the grain into the other person's granary. And they wake up the next day, and they're like, well, what happened? We still have the same amount of grain. I have to do it again. Something must have gone wrong. So they do it again. And they switch. And again, they can't figure out what's going on. Every time they take the grain over, they wake up the next morning, and they still have the exact same amount of wheat in their granary as they did the night before. Until one night, in the middle of the night, they're crossing over with their bundles of wheat on each of their backs, and they run into each other. And they realize what's been happening night after night. And at that spot, they embrace. And that spot becomes Jerusalem. And that is what makes it holy. When you can see not just what I'm due, but what the other person needs, the pain that's in their eyes, what they're lacking. There's so much that we share, but I think what we can continue to share is that sense of being able to look across the mountain in the darkest nights to see what the other person needs and how we can help them by bringing what we have and climbing that mountain together and finding a place to hold on to one another, no matter what. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Natan. I think, on behalf of everyone, thank you it was such a touching story. I think, your references to the tent and everything about that is just it's just a safe place for dialogue, and to have that communication, understanding about each other, and what might hurt us, or what what might harm us, and to have that sort of compassion. On behalf of, I think, everyone's you're getting a lot of love in the chat. Rabbi, thank you for sharing that lovely story. And also that lovely caption as well. That was a beautiful looking tent. I think we at Ramadan Tent Project definitely have got to up our game to try and make something like that. But no, it was very nostalgic as well. Just from everyone, really, bringing back a lot of lovely memories about the tent. And I know it's been a couple of years. Fingers crossed, inshallah, we will be able to share those beautiful moments in the future as well. So I'm just conscious of time, everyone, and I know we've got probably about 7 or 8 minutes left, and I just sort of wanted to open the floor to all of our guests here if they had any questions they would like to pose to any of our speakers tonight. So feel free to either raise your hand and we'll get you to ask your question directly, or you can use me as a medium. I'm happy to be that person. Feel free to just pop something in the chat, and we'll try and get your question posed to the speaker. If there's I don't see anyone having any questions right now. I would like to pose a question. I mean, to Sarah. Sarah, we haven't heard what's your. I'd like to ask, what's your most treasured memory of being in the tent It seems like Zara mentioned her time in the tent, and obviously Rabbi Niton also mentioned, and we've been blessed to have you come down to the tent so many times. Was there anything in particular over the last few years that you wanted to share that that really that you treasured?
Just the thing I love about the tent is that you come in and you sit next to strangers and you leave as friends, and it's so many different people. They don't decide to sort of like everyone's got to be the same. They really bring together difference, and that's so beautiful. And it's this, you know, a shared physical space. And you know, Rabbi's right, you know, we just it's not the same being on Zoom, as wonderful as this is. And I'm so proud of you guys for making this happen for the second year, because, you know, being together virtually is better than not being together at all. But that space where we're physically together, where we can look each other in the eyes, where we can see each other's humanity, where we can share our stories, feel our pain, share our joy, laugh together, have fun together, break bread together. It's a beautiful thing, and I pray that it can continue right into the future, because we need more spaces like this, and we need to have, you know, spaces to come together. And as Maya Angelou, you know, says, you know, we are more alike than we are unalike, and to recognize that in each other, and to have those spaces, and we need more and more of it.
Thank you for sharing. I'd like to, if I could unmute Sister Magda. She's got a question, but it's like a paragraph, I'll be honest, and I'm not best placed to answer, so I'd like to get you to ask that question, if that's okay.
Yeah, sorry about that lengthy question. So my question's for Zara, and so we saw last week in the elections that the Tories got a lot of success, and obviously there's a lot of issues with vulnerable communities that you raised in your speech, and I'm sure we would all like to be able to help more and to see more being done to help those communities. Do you think that there's a way that the campaigning from your side can make a difference, and is there a way that ordinary people can help with that? Because it seems like even though all these issues are out there and you know, they are being raised, that still people are voting for people in power who aren't doing anything about it.
So we've got a few minutes, and I feel like this is something that we could talk about for a lengthy period of time. But what I'll say is that the Labour Party was really successful in places like Preston, in Salford, in Wales, where we've seen good results. And of course, the national picture it isn't that way in particular at all. But there were these kind of hotspots where, especially socialist candidates and local councils that have really done amazing work locally with the Preston model. You know, Andy Burnham in Manchester really fighting for Greater Manchester communities against the government, where we've seen good results. And for me, that's something my party needs to take heed of, look at where things have worked. We often, you know, in politics, it depends on which side of, you know, the argument you fall on, and what kind of examples you use to back up your argument. But I would say that in 2017 and 2019, we had manifestos that were wildly popular because they addressed the material needs of our communities. We have a low wage, precarious, 0-hour economy. We have communities that have been hit by austerity and are being hit by the pandemic, and then the unemployment that's to come when the furlough plaster comes off. So we need to be answering that crisis, as well as the overwhelming climate crisis, with real solutions. So I think in terms of that bit of the answer, I think the party needs to go back to what worked, and the manifestos worked. Our position on Brexit is what didn't work, and that's what we need to learn from that. In terms of what we need to be doing, there's so many spaces. You know, not everyone needs to join political parties, although I would really, really encourage people to do that, and trade unions. There are food banks that need help. There are community groups that need people to volunteer. There are so many spaces within our communities where we saw, you know, mutual aid networks pop up. We were helping neighbors, strangers with with medicine and food, really showcasing the kind of the most beautiful aspects of humanity. And I think we need to keep those. We need to check on our neighbors. We need to support our, most vulnerable in our society, and pick up the pieces where the government doesn't. Those who fall through the gaps, our refugee migrant communities, our undocumented people, our homeless communities. So loads to do.
Thank you.
There was also one question on the chat from Shabana. If I could pose that question to the rabbi, it was I don't know if you could see the question, Rabbi, but it was around what the challenges post-COVID. What's the biggest challenge around post-COVID to ensure that our communities can stay together, and how can we ensure that we still have those spaces?
Maybe like a year-round Ramadan tent project that remained open.
I mean, like I would love to do it, but like it's a question of funding, I'm afraid. So if you know any like anyone with a lot of money, then like maybe we could talk.
Exactly.
But that's not such a strange idea, Rabbi. I'm working on a project to do just that, to have interfaith community spots using up in our inner areas. So it's not a strange idea. It's possible,
I'd love to be part of it. If that's happening, then please count me in. I think communities need to relearn how to take back spaces. Locally, we have this lovely little project down the street. I'm thinking really locally here, where they've adopted a small little green space that was being trashed out, and turned it into a place where people can come and just, hear the bird song, connect back to nature, connect back to each other. I think post-COVID, I know for myself and my family and my children, we're all sort of a little bit strangers. I'm a little scared by everybody out in the world. Like, what do you do when you come close to somebody, and how does that work? And having the opportunity to find places, a tent, a green spot, a smile as you pass, I think those are what will make our society come together post-COVID.
Amazing. Thank you for your thoughts. We're just coming up to the time of Ramadan, so I just want to give everyone like a minute just for their self-reflections on their fast and their day, before we before the act of breaking fast. And I'll just sort of wrap up. I'll post the Ramadan with with some just a couple of messages, and obviously thanks to our speakers for just this amazing session this evening. So yeah.
إني لك صمت وبك آمنت وعلى رزقك أفطرت ذهب الظمأ وابتلت العروق وثبت الأجر إن شاء الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
Thanks. I just before we finish, I'd just like to thank everyone for partaking in this blessed evening. I do hope that it was informative, inspiring, and you managed to learn something about it. I'd also like to give special thanks to all of our speakers tonight. Sarah, Darren from the Arts Council, Zara, and Rabbi Newton. There was a lot of good nuggets of information and inspiration. I think we can all take from this, and I do pray that you can all take this and obviously take those into the last few blessed nights of Ramadan, and hopefully the year after that, inshallah. It was a pleasure to have everyone on our from the Islam channel following today. I'd also like to thank them being our media partners this year, also the Arts Council UK for making this event possible. Please also do read into how Islamic Relief are helping fight world hunger at iruk.co/RTB. Ramadan is also the month of charity and giving, so we wanted to encourage you to support Ramadan Tent Project and help us continue our work. Your support is vital to keeping us going as the world transitions back to normality, by helping us hold these events. And our speakers mentioned the tents and holding the spaces for our communities to come together and making that possible. So please do try and support us. We do have a Launchpad page at www.launchpad. tent.com/RTB 2021. I'd also obviously like to invite all of our speakers back again, inshallah, next year. We will have the physical tent again, and we can reminisce about all of those lovely memories that everyone touched upon tonight. Thank you from me for joining, and I'd just like to also invite everyone to tomorrow's virtual iftar as well. That's Assalamu alaikum from me. Thank you again, everyone.